Fernando Alonso has of late been talking to anyone who will make him an offer, but now it's likely that he'll settle down and look to a future with McLaren-Renault. One man who will be delighted by this is Nigel Roebuck, the celebrated journalist, historian and author who has been positively depressed in recent years by Fernando's lack of opportunity. And Nigel, is that just the hint of a smile perhaps that's coming on your face as a result of the news this week?
Yeah, more than a hint. I mean, I'd be an even greater hint if it were a Merc. But McLaren, you know, anything to get away from Honda, frankly, after what they've been through the last 3 years.
Speaking as a Fernando Alonso man.
Well, speaking as a Fernando Alonso, I mean, yes, it's actually, I think it's been terribly sad these last 3 years that you wouldn't have known he was in the races, would you? Well, I mean, you would if you were studying a bit further back and you were concentrating on him, but in terms of results, you know, he's obviously, you know, not had a prayer.
Well, before we get on to the future and the potential, just give me an idea of how much, what you think about Fernando and how much he means to you in terms of watching a Grand Prix these days.
Well, I think Fernando is the greatest driver of this century. I've thought that for a dozen years and more. It really registered with me once when I was talking to Massa. And I asked him a question which I didn't think he would answer, but I said, you know, you were teammates to both. Michael or Fernando, who is better? And he just said, oh, Fernando. And that really registered with me.
So you must have been incensed when he left Ferrari or Ferrari left him,
well,
whichever way you want to look at it.
Well, I was, but I mean, on the other hand, after the year, if you think how bad Ferrari were in 2014, I mean, they were embarrassing. And Marco Mattiacci was the car salesman, was running the team. And that was what Fernando fundamentally couldn't cope with him. A combination of that and a pretty terrible car. I think it was a lot of things coming together at one time. And
but then in fairness to McLaren, nobody else was offering him a drive at that point, astonishingly. No, Red Bull didn't pick up the phone to him. What do you think about that?
Well, I don't really get it. It's
because a Vettel-Fernando swap deal would have been perfect for Formula One.
Well, yeah, you'd have thought so. I mean, but that's not Red Bull's policy, is it? They don't take people from outside. I don't know. I mean, I in my column this week in Autosport, I mentioned this. A friend of mine, who was a retired driver, has this theory that Dieter Zetscher and Sergio Marchionne at some point shook hands on a deal. If you don't sign him and we don't, neither of us will have to worry about him. Yeah. And if we keep our engines from going to any other team he might drive for, same applies.
Do you think it's the same Fernando that we'll see? Let's assume that the McLaren-Renault is a very quick car. How good is Fernando 2018 going to be?
Well, I mean, I don't know about you. I think he's been as good this year as as ever I've seen.
I would agree. Yeah.
So I don't have any real concerns, on that score. I mean, fact is, he isn't going to have the horsepower that Lewis and Seb are going to have, and that's pretty much. It's
going to be an interesting fight within the Renault family, though, right? You're going to have Hulkenberg, Sainz. You're going to have Ricciardo, Verstappen, and Van Dorn, Alonso.
Yeah.
How do you think that's going to go?
Well, I mean, they are apparently they will have exactly the engines the Renault Formula One team will have. So it's not as though they're going to be a year behind her, I think. So
no.
As I say, it isn't going to be like a Mercedes, but it is going to be infinitely better than what they've had.
What for you defines Fernando's talent and style?
I think the first thing that's always struck me about Fernando is that again, I don't know about you, but I can't see any obvious weaknesses. And overwhelmingly, I remember talking to Rob Smedley about when he was working with Massa at Ferrari, and of course Fernando was in the other car. And he said any other driver in any team, it tends to swing back and forth. Somebody will have the upper hand, and then it'll swing back the other way, and the other guy will have the upper hand for a few races, and then it'll swing back. And he said, and with Fernando, that will never happen, because he never, ever has an off day.
He got passed at the restart by Daniel Ricciardo in Austin about 3 years ago.
He did. He did. Yes, he did.
Okay, we'll give him that one.
But fundamentally, he doesn't. And I mean, this is a great aspect of what separates him from the rest, in my mind, because this thing about never having an off day. I mean, if you think about it, Vettel has off seasons. He does. 2014.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And even, I mean, even Lewis, you know, Lewis's greatest fan wouldn't deny he still has weekends when he's
a Rosberg or a Bottas will do it.
He's just not there.
Singapore a couple of years ago, last year. No, 2 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm sure Singapore this weekend, he'll probably be on it, I would imagine, because it'll be an interesting fight. Just as a slight aside here,
absolutely.
Everyone thinks Ferrari will dominate Singapore, but it'll be interesting to see how quick Mercedes are there. I don't think they'll be slow.
Well, no, I agree with you. And also, I think it'll be everybody's predicting it'll be Ferrari, but where are Red Bull going to be this weekend?
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, getting back to Fernando, the wet, a car that's falling apart, a car that's imbalanced. I remember him saying once that he hated groove tyres because they took away some of his ability to be able to drive through graining and tyre deg.
Yeah.
Terrible phrase.
Yeah.
So there are some things, of course, that a driver cannot do, but he still has this amazing ability. You asked me, to be able to dance with a car mid-corner, regardless of what it's doing, and make it look from the outside as if the car is in harmony with the road.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is...
Funnily enough, actually, I thought his laps at Indianapolis. I mean, I was at the race, but I wasn't at qualifying. But I know Gilles de Ferran said to Fernando before qualifying, these are going to be the 4 worst laps of your life, I'm telling you. You know, right, trim car, absolutely trimmed out, right on the edge. Well, you know, when I watched qualifying before I left, and he did a terrific job. He was 5th or whatever he was. But there was no sign of anything, you know, the car...
Ragged?
No, not a trace of it. But when I got to India and spoke to him about it, he said, you have no idea what I was doing in the car. He said, I'm really glad it looked like that, but it didn't feel like that. So I think, I remember, you know, Stefano Domenicali always said, another thing that he said, I've never come across anybody like it in terms of, it's almost sort of Ronnie Peterson-like, going quickly in a bad car. And he said that was the huge difference between Fernando and Kimi, for instance. That Kimi needs the car to be absolutely there.
Juan Pablo Montoya features a little bit on the show this week. Not unlike Fernando in some ways. And I know in terms of your love of Formula One. No.
I mean, I've regretted. I mean, Juan Pablo left at the wrong time, in my opinion. I understood the reasons, but I thought he was a great loss to Formula One.
Similar drivers in some ways. They're both racing drivers.
Yes, absolutely. And
did you see them together at Indy this year?
Yes, I did. Yeah, they. In fact, I remember I remember seeing Juan Pablo at Daytona one year after he'd left Formula One, and I said, you know, who'd you miss? And he said, Fernando. That's about it.